Level 1. The Intern. You show up on a Monday in June, wearing clothes you bought specifically for this job. You ironed your shirt twice. You took the bus because you can't afford to park downtown. The office is on the third floor of a building that used to be a warehouse. Exposed brick, concrete floors, a foosball table nobody uses. There's a kitchen with cold brew on tap, and a whiteboard covered in words you don't understand yet. Burn rate, runway, Series A. You are given a laptop and a badge and a desk in the corner near the bathroom. Nobody tells you what to do. You sit there for 2 hours before someone walks over and introduces themselves. They're an engineer. They look like they haven't slept in 3 days. They probably haven't. They tell you to set up your development environment and ping them when you're done. You don't know what a development environment is. You Google it in a private browser window because you're terrified someone will see. There are 30 people in this company. Everyone seems to know each other. They have inside jokes. They reference meetings you weren't in and decisions you weren't part of. You eat lunch alone at your desk, scrolling through the company's Slack, trying to decode the culture. There are channels for everything. A channel for engineering, a channel for product, a channel for random memes, a channel called Wins, where people post screenshots of dashboards going up. You don't know what the dashboards measure. You don't ask because everyone else seems to know. Your first task is small. Fix a bug in the onboarding flow, a button that doesn't redirect properly. It takes you 4 days to fix something a senior engineer could do in 20 minutes. You submit your code. Someone reviews it and leaves 12 comments. You feel like a failure. You fix the comments and resubmit. It gets approved. Your code is now live. Thousands of people will interact with something you built. You feel a small pulse of something that might be pride. You want more of it. You're making $20 an hour. Some of your friends are making more at their summer internships at banks. But they're making slide decks. You're building something. At least, that's what you tell yourself when you check your bank account. Level 2. The Junior Engineer. They offered you a full-time role before your internship ended. The salary is $85,000. It sounds like a fortune until you move to the city where the company is based and realize that rent will eat half of it. You sign the offer anyway. They give you equity, stock options, 0.05% of the company. It means nothing right now. The company is worth $15 million on paper. Your options are worth $7,500 if everything goes perfectly. You sign the paperwork without fully understanding it. A 4-year vesting schedule with a 1-year cliff. You'll Google that later. Your job is to write code and not break things. You are assigned a mentor. She's a senior engineer who has been here since the company was 5 people in an apartment. She reviews your pull requests with a patience you'll appreciate more in retrospect. You ship features. Small ones at first. A notification system. A settings page. A fix for a login issue that's been annoying customers for months. Every feature you ship goes to real users immediately. There is no staging environment. There is no QA team. You push to production and pray. Sometimes things break. When things break at 2 a.m., your phone buzzes with an alert. You open your laptop in bed and fix it while your roommate sleeps 3 feet away. You attend stand-up every morning at 9:15. 15 people in a circle. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Any blockers? You learn to summarize 8 hours of work in 2 sentences. You learn that nobody cares about the details. They care about the output. You stay late most nights, not because anyone tells you to, because the engineers around you stay late, because the culture rewards presence even when it pretends it doesn't. You watch the first round of layoffs from your desk. 7 people. The CEO sends a company-wide email calling it a restructuring. Nobody calls it what it is. The Slack channels get quieter for a week. Then, everyone pretends it didn't happen. You learn something about startups that nobody mentions in the job posting. The mission only matters until the money runs out. Then, the spreadsheet decides who stays. You are 23 years old, and you are building software that people pay money to use. That fact still amazes you some mornings. Other mornings, you wonder how long you can keep this pace before something gives. Level 3. The Senior Engineer. It took you 3 years to get here. 3 years of shipping features, fixing bugs, and mentoring the new junior engineers who remind you of yourself. You've seen the company grow from 30 people to 120. The office moved. The new one has 2 floors and a receptionist and branded water bottles. The foosball table made the move. It's still untouched. You are now responsible for systems, not just features. You design the architecture for new products. You make decisions about databases and infrastructure that will either scale beautifully or collapse under load in 18 months. When a junior engineer makes a mistake, it affects a feature. When you make a mistake, it affects the platform. You sit in meetings with the CTO and argue about technical debt. Technical debt is the pile of shortcuts and quick fixes that accumulate over years of building fast. Every startup has it. Every startup ignores it until it can't. You're the one saying, we can't ignore it anymore. Nobody wants to hear that. Fixing technical debt doesn't launch new features. It doesn't impress investors. It doesn't show up on the roadmap. But if you don't fix it, everything gets slower. Every new feature takes twice as long. Every deploy is a risk. You're the person in the room saying the unsexy thing. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. You've stopped taking it personally. You also do code reviews now, hours of them every day. You read other people's code the way an editor reads manuscripts. You catch mistakes before they become disasters. You leave comments that are firm but not cruel. You remember what it felt like to get your first code review back covered in red. You try to be better than that. You've become the person people come to when something is broken and nobody can figure out why. You like that. You also resent it sometimes. You haven't built something new from scratch in 6 months. You spend most of your time keeping old things alive. You're on the on-call rotation now. 1 week out of every 4, you carry a pager that can go off at any hour. A database locks up at midnight. A third-party API starts returning errors at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. A deploy breaks the payment system and customers can't check out. You fix it all from your couch in sweatpants with a cold cup of coffee beside you. Your friends outside of tech don't understand what you do. They think you make apps. You've stopped trying to explain the difference between a front end and a back end because their eyes glaze over 10 seconds in. Your salary is $165,000 now. Your equity is worth more on paper than your salary. You try not to check the valuation updates. You check them every week. Level 4. The product manager. You didn't plan this move. You were an engineer who kept asking why. Why are we building this feature? Who asked for it? What problem does it solve? Have we talked to the customers? Your manager noticed. She said you think like a PM. You didn't know what that meant. Now you do. You are the person who decides what gets built and why. You don't write code anymore. You write documents. Product requirement documents, specifications, roadmaps. You talk to customers. You sit on Zoom calls with people who use your product every day and listen to them describe problems you didn't know existed. You translate their frustrations into features. You prioritize those features against 100 other requests. Everyone has an opinion. The CEO wants a new dashboard. The sales team wants a CRM integration. The engineers want to refactor the backend. The designer wants to redesign the onboarding flow. You have resources for maybe 2 of those things this quarter. You pick. You defend your picks. You make enemies. A PM's job is to say no to most things, so you can say yes to the right things. Nobody thanks you for the things you said no to. They only notice the things you didn't build. You run sprint planning meetings. You write user stories. You stare at analytics dashboards trying to understand why conversion dropped 3% last Tuesday. You find the answer. A button color changed in a deploy that nobody flagged. You fix it. Conversion recovers. Nobody notices. That's the job. You are the most cross-functional person in the company. You talk to engineering, design, sales, marketing, support, and leadership every single day. Everyone thinks you work for them. You work for the customer. At least that's the idea. The reality is you work for whoever is yelling the loudest that week. You learn to manage up and down and sideways at the same time. You learn that influence without authority is the hardest skill in any organization. You get good at it. You have to. You also learn that the best PMs are the ones who can kill their own ideas. You fall in love with a feature concept. You You spend 2 weeks researching it. You build a case. You present it. The data says no. You kill it. That hurts more than you expected. You learn to hold ideas loosely. You learn that being right about the wrong thing at the wrong time is the same as being wrong. Level 5. The engineering manager. You manage people now, not code. People. 8 engineers report to you. You do one-on-ones every week, 30 minutes each. You listen to career goals and personal frustrations and complaints about the build system and confessions about burnout. You give feedback that you hope is honest without being crushing. You write performance reviews that take days. You decide who gets promoted and who doesn't. Then you sit across from someone and explain why they aren't ready yet. They try not to look devastated. You try not to feel guilty. You hire. Hiring is the most important thing you do and the thing you're least prepared for. You read 200 resumes for a single role. You conduct phone screens. You run coding exercises and system design sessions. You evaluate people in 45 minutes and decide whether to bet $150,000 a year on them. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're catastrophically wrong. You spend 6 months managing someone out because the interview didn't reveal what daily work would. That process is painful for everyone. HR gives you a script. The script doesn't help. You shield your team from chaos. The company is growing fast, and the priorities change every month. The CEO comes back from a conference with a new vision. The board wants different metrics. A competitor launched a feature, and now everyone is panicking. Your job is to absorb that chaos so your team can focus. You attend meetings so they don't have to. You translate executive panic into reasonable priorities. You are a filter between leadership and the people doing the actual work. You also run the promotion calibration meetings. You sit in a room with other managers and argue about whether your people deserve to move up. You advocate for engineers who don't know how to advocate for themselves. You learn that promotions aren't about merit alone. They're about visibility. The best engineer on your team does incredible work that nobody sees because it happens in the infrastructure layer. The mediocre engineer ships a flashy feature that the CEO mentions in an all-hands. Guess who gets promoted? You fight that. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose and have to explain the loss to someone who deserved better. You write almost no code now. You miss it. Some nights you open your laptop and write a small script just to remember what it felt like. You are 29 years old and you manage people who are older than you. Some of them resent it. Most of them don't care as long as you keep the nonsense away from their desks. You've learned that the best engineers don't want to be managed. They want to be unblocked. Your job is to remove obstacles and then get out of the way. Level 6. The director. The company raised a Series C, $80 million. The valuation is $500 million. There are now 400 employees across 3 offices. The original 30 are scattered. Some left for other startups. Some left for big tech companies that offered double the salary. Some burned out and disappeared. A few are still here, holding senior titles and early equity that is starting to look life-changing. You run the entire engineering organization, 40 engineers across 5 teams. You don't manage individuals anymore. You manage managers. Your calendar is a wall of meetings from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., back to back, no gaps. You eat lunch during video calls. You do your actual thinking after 7 p.m. when the office empties and the Slack messages slow down. You set the technical strategy for the company. You decide what infrastructure to invest in. You negotiate headcount with finance. Every open role is a negotiation. Finance sees a cost. You see a capability. You present roadmaps to the board. The board asks questions that reveal they don't fully understand what your team does, but they understand the numbers attached to it. You've learned to speak in numbers. Everything is a metric now. Velocity, uptime, incident response time, deployment frequency. The humans behind the numbers are abstractions at this level. You try not to let that happen. You still do skip-level meetings with individual engineers once a quarter. You ask them what's broken. They tell you things your managers didn't. That's always how it works. The people closest to the problems are the last ones asked about them. You've started losing people. Good people. People you hired and mentored and promoted. They leave for competitors or start their own companies. Every departure feels personal, even though you know it isn't. You've learned that retention isn't about money, it's about meaning. People stay when they feel like their work matters. They leave when they feel like a line item. You also handle the crises now. A deploy goes wrong on a Friday night and the product is down for 90 minutes. Customers are posting on social media. The CEO is texting you. The board member who leads the audit committee is emailing the CFO. You run the incident response from your kitchen table while your family eats dinner without you. You fix it. You write a post-mortem. You present it on Monday like it was a learning experience. It was. The learning is that nothing is stable. The learning is that everything you build is one bad deploy away from a front-page disaster. Level 7. The VP. You are Vice President of Engineering. The title sounds impressive. The reality is politics. You sit in the executive team meetings now. You're at the table with the CEO, the CFO, the VP of Sales, the VP of Marketing, the General Counsel. Everyone is fighting for resources. Sales wants more features to close deals. Marketing wants better analytics. Finance wants to cut headcount. You defend your team. You justify every dollar. You present hiring plans that get cut in half by people who don't understand what your team does. You are responsible for the technical vision of a company that is now worth $1.2 billion. A unicorn. That word gets used in press releases and investor decks. It means nothing to you. It means the stakes are higher and the margin for error is smaller. You deal with outages that make the news. A 45-minute downtime becomes a Twitter thread, becomes a news article. You deal with security incidents that could destroy the company if the details leaked. You deal with a team that is growing faster than the culture can absorb. New hires don't know the old ways. Old employees resent the new ones. The scrappy energy of the early days is gone, replaced by process and hierarchy and Jira tickets. You miss the garage. Everyone misses the garage. Nobody wants to go back to it. You fire someone for the first time at this level. Not a performance issue, a conduct issue. A senior leader who crossed a line. HR handles the paperwork. You handle the conversation. It takes 11 minutes. The person stares at you with a look you'll remember for years. You walk back to your office and close the door and sit there for 20 minutes doing nothing. Nobody prepares you for that part of leadership. The part where your decisions end someone's chapter at a company they helped build. Your equity is worth $3 million on paper. Paper is the key word. You can't sell it. The company hasn't gone public. There's no liquidity event. You're rich in theory and exhausted in practice. Your spouse asks when things will slow down. You say soon. You've been saying soon for 4 years. You have a recurring dream where your laptop won't stop buzzing. You wake up and check your phone. 3 new messages. It's 4 a.m. You answer them. Level 8. The CTO. The previous CTO left. He was a co-founder who built the first version of the product in his bedroom. He's brilliant. He's also burned out and tired of managing 200 engineers when all he wanted was to write code. He takes a sabbatical that everyone knows is permanent. The CEO asks you to step up. You've been here 6 years. You know the code base. You know the team. You know where the bodies are buried. That's a metaphor for the technical decisions made years ago that everyone regrets, but nobody fixed. You are now the Chief Technology Officer. You report to the CEO and the board. You own the entire technical organization. Engineering, infrastructure, security, data, IT. 300 people. You set the strategy that determines what the company builds for the next 3 to 5 years. You evaluate build versus buy decisions worth millions. You decide whether to acquire smaller companies for their technology or build it in-house. You represent the company at conferences. You do press interviews where journalists simplify everything you say into headlines that miss the point. You are the public face of the technology. Journalists ask you about AI. Investors ask you about AI. The board asks you about AI. Customers ask you about AI. Everyone asks you about AI. You integrate AI into the product. Some of it works. Some of it is theater designed to impress the market. You know which is which. The market doesn't always know. The board doesn't always care. You work 70 hours a week. Your calendar is controlled by an executive assistant who guards your time like a national resource. You make decisions that affect hundreds of careers with incomplete information in compressed time frames. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes the decision looks right for 2 years and then breaks. You won't know the difference until it's too late to change course. You also deal with the talent war. Other companies are poaching your best people with offers you can't match. Stock refreshers, signing bonuses, remote work policies. You lose your best architect to a competitor on a Thursday and spend Friday convincing his team that everything is fine. Everything is not fine. You spend the next 3 months rebuilding what he took with him when he left. Not code, knowledge. The things that live in one person's head that nobody thought to document. You eat dinner with your family 3 nights a week if you're lucky. Your kid asked you last month why you always look at your phone. You didn't have a good answer. You still don't. Level 9, the co-founder. You weren't there from the very beginning, but you were close. Employee number 4. You joined when the company was an idea and a prototype, and 3 people in a co-working space. You took a salary cut of 60% from your previous job. Your friends thought you were insane. Your parents didn't understand. You owned 5% of a company worth nothing. You slept on an air mattress in the office for the first 6 months. You ate ramen for dinner 4 nights a week because the company couldn't afford to pay you enough to eat properly. You built the backend that still runs under everything today. Layers of new code sit on top of your original architecture like geological strata. You have watched this thing grow from 0 revenue to $200 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. You remember the first paying customer. You remember the champagne. You remember the first angry customer, too. You remember thinking this might actually work. You also remember the night it almost didn't. A server crash at 3 a.m. that nearly lost 6 months of customer data. You and 2 other engineers worked for 14 hours straight to recover it. Nobody outside the company ever knew. That was the night you understood what the word startup actually means. It means everything can end at any moment. The company has raised $400 million total across 6 rounds. Each round diluted your ownership. Your 5% is now closer to 2%. But 2% of something worth billions is still a number that doesn't feel real. You've been doing this for 8 years. You're tired in a way that sleep can't fix. You've missed weddings. You've missed funerals. You work through the birth of your first child on a laptop in the hospital waiting room. There was a production outage and no one else could fix it. Your marriage survived. Barely. Other co-founders' marriages didn't. You know 3 founders personally who got divorced during their company's growth phase. You know 2 who had breakdowns that nobody talked about publicly. You know 1 who disappeared for 6 months and came back different. The company is preparing for an IPO. Investment bankers in expensive suits give presentations about market timing and pricing and lockup periods. They use words like window and multiple and float. If the IPO goes well, your equity becomes real. Not paper. Real. Life-changing real. Generational real. If it doesn't, you've spent 8 years building something that ends with a press release and a severance package. You try not to think about that. You think about it every night. Level 10. The Ghost. The IPO happened. The stock opened at $32 and closed at $47 on the first day. You watch from a conference room surrounded by people you've worked with for almost a decade. Someone popped champagne. Someone cried. You felt something strange. Not joy exactly. Not relief. Something closer to exhaustion finally being allowed to exist out loud. Your shares vested. The lockup period ended 6 months later. You sold enough to pay off your mortgage and your parents' mortgage and set up a trust for your kid. You are wealthy in a way that still doesn't feel real when you buy groceries. You stayed at the company for another year after the IPO, but it wasn't the same. Public companies are different animals. Quarterly earnings calls, shareholder expectations. Every decision filtered through how it affects the stock price. The soul of the thing you built got replaced by a spreadsheet. The conversations changed. People stopped talking about the product and started talking about the multiple. You left on a Tuesday. There was a happy hour. The CEO gave a toast. He called you a legend. You shook hands with people you'd bled alongside for the better part of a decade. Some of them you'll stay close with forever. Some of them you'll never speak to again. You know which ones are which, and it surprises you. You take 6 months off. You travel. You sleep past 6 a.m. for the first time in 8 years. You sit on a beach and feel your nervous system slowly unclench from a tension you didn't even know it was holding. Then the itch comes back. It always comes back. You start advising other startups. A kid in a coffee shop pitches you an idea on a napkin. He's 24. He's terrified and electric, and he reminds you of yourself before the weight of it all settled in. You write him a check. Angel investing, they call it. You call it something else. You call it trying to feel that thing again. That pulse you felt when you were an intern and your code went live for the first time, and something shifted under your feet. You know it won't feel the same. It never does the second time around. But you chase it anyway, because the alternative is sitting still. And sitting still was never something you were built for. Somewhere, right now, a college student is sitting in a dorm room staring at a laptop. They have an idea. It's probably bad. Most ideas are. But they don't know that yet, and that ignorance is the most valuable thing they own. They're going to skip class tomorrow to write code. They're going to pitch their roommate on being a co-founder. They're going to Google how to incorporate a company in Delaware and feel a rush of adrenaline when the form asks them for a business name. They have no idea what they're signing up for. The sleepless years and the failed hires and the investors who say no 50 times before someone finally says yes. The loneliness of building something that might not work and might not matter. The weight of being responsible for other people's livelihoods before you figured out your own. They'll learn. They always do. The cycle continues.